Good day, everybody, and welcome to Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry's 360 Dialogue series. Today's topic will be focused around the future of energy. We want to discuss the important role that energy plays in aiding global economic recovery and helping countries to focus on their green growth strategies. Looking towards the future, companies today, we want to make the choice to use renewable energy over traditional forms to help and make a difference in what consumers decide between your company and those of your competitors. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you of key interactive elements of the platform. If you look below, you can ask questions directly to our speakers today, our panelists today. And also, if you would like to network or have one-to-one direct communication with any of your peers present today, you can use the right-hand side dialogue boxes that you see present on your screens. Today, we are joined by just under 200 delegates representing 35 countries, and this is our fourth 360 Dialogue series. I'd now like to introduce Hassan Al-Hashimi, Vice President for International Relations, representing Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to give his welcome address. Over to you, Hassan.
Thank you very much, Leila, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Dubai Chamber, it is my honor and pleasure to welcome all of you to our 360 Dialogue series. Today's session brings to focus a very important sector, energy, which is an essential input for the functioning of not only businesses, but also nations. The energy sector has a key role to play in all pillars of any given economy, such as transport, buildings, agriculture, water and waste management, just to name a few. 2020 was a turbulent year for the global energy sector, with COVID-19 slashing demand and disrupting market norms due to travel restrictions and government-imposed lockdowns. However, the global use of renewable energy saw an increase. In fact, according to the International Energy Agency, IEA, renewables could meet 80% of all energy demand growth over the next decade. The United Arab Emirates has been very much aware of the importance of moving towards clean energy and has a focused strategy to develop its capacity and be a global leader in green economy. The UAE's Energy Strategy 2050 aims to increase the contribution of clean energy in the total energy mix from 25 to 50% by 2050 and reduce the carbon footprint of its power generation by 70%. Last month, the UAE Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure, in partnership with Khalifa University and the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, launched the National Integrated Energy Model that will provide a roadmap for the future of sustainable energy for UAE based on the vision of the federal government. Just days ago, the United Arab Emirates had started commercial use of nuclear energy, which means millions of households in the country could be lit up by power generated from its nuclear reactors. It is a proud milestone that will go down in history for generations to come. Dubai has also been making investments in clean energy technology, adapting international best practices. Under its clean energy strategy, Dubai aims to produce 75% of its energy requirements from clean sources by 2050. The strategy also aims to make Dubai a global center of clean energy and green economy, and we have seen an increase in multi-stakeholder partnerships to build a green economy. For instance, the theme for Expo 2020, with a strong focus on sustainability, is an extension of this vision, with the Sustainability Pavilion generating its own power and recycling water. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no denying that promoting clean energy and carbon reduction is one of the most pressing issues for businesses. And I agree that achieving this is not easy. It will take the combined efforts of government and private sector to make a strong commitment towards investments in new technologies, funding low carbon projects, and right incentives to make innovations like carbon capture economically viable. And that is why our discussion today is very timely and relevant. And we're fortunate to have with us an esteemed panel of knowledgeable experts from the industry. They will offer their perspectives and insights on challenges within the business ecosystem. I look forward to the forthcoming discussions, and I hope you will find it thought-provoking and informative. Thank you for your kind attention and participation. Back to you, Leila.
Thank you very much, Hassan. I'd now like to pass you on to Rebecca McLaughlin-Eastham, who will be our moderator today for our proceedings. Over to you, Rebecca. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Leila. Also, a very good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and another warm welcome to this 360 dialogue series on the future of energy. As with so many global sectors, of course, the pandemic has had a significant impact on not only energy prices, but also the wider fossil fuel industry. So we're asking today what can be done to ensure that the broader energy sector adapts and not only survives, but truly thrives in this new environment. Well, for one, as Hassan was mentioning, we have the UAE's Energy Strategy 2050 as the roadmap not only for the Middle East, but also the wider region's energy transition, reducing its reliance on fossil fuels and increasing renewable energy production. And as the green economy takes root and begins to flourish, of course, there will be projects and initiatives in the works, providing plenty of opportunities, not least for PPPs, a key part of our discussion here today. Dubai is very much committed, as we've heard, to creating a lifeline for tomorrow, where the planet's sustainability feeds the economic agenda. And the green economy is truly a priority for the UAE's post-COVID-19 recovery plan, with plenty of research and development, investment in those key partnerships, and relating to renewable, alternative, nuclear, and clean energy, as well as electric cars, not to be forgotten, and the circular economy. To help me drill down into all of the issues at hand and to explore how the fourth industrial revolution technologies such as the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence are pivotal to this sector's future, I have an esteemed panel of guests that I'll introduce you to in just a moment. But before that, let's watch a short video that will set the scene for our discussion today.
The new normal, where we've realized we need the environment to thrive, and that together we can better the path we are taking, where technological prowess and scientific progress join forces, where the quest for zero carbon footprint pioneers alternative energy, and urban society is committed to creating a lifeline for tomorrow, where our planet's sustainability feeds the economic agenda, where educators and businesses partner to prosper, where shared thinking fosters ingenuity and open-sourced R&D accelerates experimentation, where together we will architect a global blueprint for scalable and sustainable communities. And as we take a step forward, it's time to say, join us. Make your mark. Welcome to the path definers and the game changers amongst us. Welcome to a city of renewed energies. Welcome to Dubai.
Welcome back, everybody. And let me introduce my distinguished panel of guests. I know that you're joining me in giving them a warm virtual welcome. They are starting with Stefan Gilbert. He is the board member for Clean Energy Business Council for the MENA region. We also have Dr. Mahfoud. He is the Vice President of Energy Economics at Siemens Energy. And last but not least, we have Dr. Shihab Al-Barai. He is the partner at Strategy and part of the PwC network. A very warm and energized welcome to you all this morning. Thank you for joining the chamber in this important discussion. As Hassan said, such a timely one, given the environment, the changing landscape. Let's start with the green economy and clean energy. A broad question to you, Stefan. How might clean energy facilitate the economic recovery going forward?
Good morning. topic again. Look, COVID-19 has changed countries' agenda. That's the first thing we can see clearly. Globally, the pandemic has created even more awareness about climate change than it used to be. It's something we're witnessing globally, but also in the MENA region, obviously. We can see clearly that the COVID-19 has created an acceleration towards greener transition. We could have thought that the result of this could be that we would go back to business as usual, but clearly it's not the case. As we have seen and we have witnessed in Europe, engagement from the young population has forced politics and governments to take measures, and it became a political engagement from our governments. And I think politics and countries are now taking this very seriously. And we can see that instead of going to business as usual, more and more countries have really taken the lead on establishing new Green Deals. And if we look at the global picture, EU has now established a Green Deal with very clear and concrete targets, going, for example, 2050 climate neutral for Europe. This is a binding engagement and legal engagement. And the same with the UK, the same with Japan, for example, and even recently elected President Biden has gone back to the European, let's say, mindset, going to 2050 net zero emissions, which is a very ambitious target, and even closer to our time frame, it's carbon pollution free for power generation by 2035. So we can see that the result of the pandemic and the situation we lived in with less emissions, less CO2 pollution improved, has led the way to the way we want to be. And in this region, where it's a bit particular because we are the source of oil and gas, we see the same trend. We see leaders taking ownership of the climate transition, and that's a very good and let's say enthusiastic situation we're facing for the next decade. So our view is that the pandemic is probably going to even accelerate the transition towards greener economy, creating new opportunities for businesses. I'm board member of the Clean Energy Business Council, but also an employee of ENGIE in charge of strategy for the company in this region, and we really take this as an opportunity rather than a challenge. So for us, the recovery will be there, probably creating new job opportunities in the region. We have seen our leaders in the region taking very strong initiatives and commitments for the coming years. So we can be enthusiastic to go in that direction rather than back to business as usual. I think that we have said before, travel and different businesses have been impacted seriously and severely. We are all waiting for a recovery to come, but we can see that probably those subsidies that were going towards oil and gas investments can be used now towards greener energy and solutions for the future.
Thank you, Stefan. Yes, most definitely business unusual. And as you say, the global pandemic has accelerated the green and clean, it's a tongue twister, the green and clean agendas of many countries, not least from the European Union, but also touching upon the United Nations. Let me come to you, Dr. Volkmar. The UN heralds clean energy as the future, the key to unlocking a sustainable future for the world. And Siemens, of course, has been heavily involved in not only the construction, but the managing of major energy projects here in the Middle East. My question is a simple one. What shifts in demand, as we were referring to with Stefan, do you foresee for sustainable energy after COVID-19?
Yeah, thank you very much, Rebecca, and I completely agree with what Stefan already raised. Now, if you look 1 year back, I mean, it was pretty unclear how the world would react to the pandemic situation. In the end, I mean, the decision was taken that the recovery package or a stimulus package would eventually serve two purposes. The one is to give impetus on the economy, and the second one is to take also or serve the purpose of climate action. And I mean, what we see is, and also as a company, I mean, we are very much committed to lead this energy transition and to provide also technology in order to make this transition an economic one. And in the end, I mean, and that is a very important tipping point to reach, is that the sustainable energy needs to become a more economic option than, let's say, the conventional power generation. But this is something what eventually takes some more time, where also the required policies need to be set accordingly in order to also support the investment into these new technologies. Now, as mentioned already, I mean, the EU is very strongly moving into that direction, utilizing in particular the renewable energy in the power sector, which is much more easy to integrate in renewables into the power sector than into other sectors, and bringing them to sectors like the transport sectors via sector coupling, power to X as one example. So these are a few trends and directions of what we right now see. But there's one aspect I also want to point out. I mean, for a foreseeable future, we also need to take care of a reliable power supply, which is also abundant and which is also important to maintain the economic growth. And this eventually requires, for example, natural gas still to be an important transition technology. And even investment into, let's say, gas power plants eventually are a sustainable investment because they are operated with natural gas today. And in the foreseeable future, they may be operated with green gases such as green hydrogen. So this is another aspect also to take into consideration when talking about a sustainable and climate compatible future.
Absolutely, energy security so pivotal to the future and our discussion today. Dr. Shahab, let me come to you. Let's talk about the UAE and its diversification strategy, its strategic shift from a reliance on conventional or traditional fossil fuels towards renewables. Talk to me about the circular economic argument, consuming less, minimizing waste, preserving the planet for future generations. Where do we stand and where are we going?
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. So I think the region as a whole in the UAE is definitely at the forefront, is undergoing a shift in mindset. Whereas in the past, sustainability was considered more of a penalty on investments or an additional cost. It is now being more and more considered as an opportunity to drive economic growth, to create jobs, and to equalize a bit the playing field when it comes to attracting industries and industrial investment into the region. And I think the realization is that just as the region has had and enjoyed an advantage in having abundant, cheap hydrocarbon energy that has fueled the economic growth and the development in the past, the region also has abundant and cheap renewable resources that it can exploit. So in effect, if anybody is able to navigate the energy transition in an optimal fashion, it is the countries of this region, because they have a leg in each endpoint of the energy transition, and a very strong leg. So the circularity and the circular carbon economy concept, for example, as an extension of that, is, as you've mentioned, it's about reducing. So whether it is reduction of waste, reduction of carbon emissions, reduction of energy through energy efficiency, and so on, reusing and recycling, and also a fourth R, which is removing, so carbon capture and sequestration, for example. So, applying this and looking at all of the economic activities that we have, and trying to figure out how to build the business models that encourage circularity is a very exciting area, and we're seeing a lot of novel technological applications, but also business models developing, around these. I think the UAE recently announced, big plans for green and blue hydrogen. There are operating carbon capture facilities in the UAE already that use the carbon for enhanced oil recovery. I think the utilities in the UAE are looking at circularity as well, and the government is looking very actively at recycling and reduction of waste. So I think it's a very active area and an area of investment and future growth.
Let me pick up on that, because we've mentioned investment also. Dr. Volkmar has touched upon it. And in particular, I'm keen to get your view on whether you think there's enough regulation in place. Is there adequate framework, policy, financial infrastructure to allow this sector to truly flourish?
I believe that yes, there's a lot to be done on the regulatory front. Clearly, you have to have in place the playbook, right, that allows the private sector to come in and invest and de-risk these investments, so that there's a match up between the risk and return that attracts private investment. But that said, I think the necessary condition is to have the fundamental economic advantages in place, and we're seeing already movement in this space without having a complete regulatory framework in place, because it's an iterative process. So I think investment, there are always investments that can proceed under the current regulatory framework, and the regulatory framework needs to be adjusted and evolve with time as investments grow. I think the key thing is that fundamentally there are areas where the region has an economic advantage in terms of cheap renewable resources. This creates opportunities, and I think the regulators and policymakers need to create the space for these opportunities to proceed, and then regulate them in a way that makes sense. On the other side of what you've mentioned, I think it's also important to open up the financial markets in the region and figure out a way to attract I think foreign direct investment, private investment in this sector, because if there is a sector that is going to attract foreign direct investment in the region at scale, it is actually building this new global energy system in the region. In the past, it used to be refining and heavy industries and petchems and so on. I think going in the future, if we're serious about attracting FDI, that we need to create the financial ecosystem in the region that targets these sectors and these green businesses.
Absolutely. And Stefan, let me come to you on that point in terms of FDI and specifically with emerging markets versus developing ones. How can emerging markets really make good, capitalize on their energy ambitions when it comes to clean and renewables? How easy is it for them to attract FDI and even to raise the capital to get going in the first place?
What we can see that from the CDC, there's we are sitting really with first our members from the private sectors together with governments, institutions, really to bridge the gap and see how we can really develop this public-private culture in the region. You know, the region's been very well integrated, especially when we talk about the energy sector. So we have seen with the rise of renewable energies, the opportunities for the private sector to invest and be part of the energy landscape, which was very limited to a few countries first in the region when we were talking about conventional power generation. But when you look at Dubai, for example, they've opened completely the opportunities to the private sector with the Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Solar Park, for example, which is something very, very important, very keen. We see Saudi Arabia moving in that direction as well, so they can probably focus, you know, the investments from governments on other kind of infrastructure and leave the renewable sector and energy to some private investors, which is very keen, very interesting for us, even at ENGIE, as foreign investor in the region for the last 30 years. We see this as very important, in line with what Dr. Shahid was saying, with policies, regulatory framework in place, something very flexible and attractive at the same time. The region can sometimes be seen as a risky region, but I think we are also trying to help, you know, and mature some of the innovations and new technologies that are arising. That's the purpose of this dialogue that we are creating at the Clean Energy Business Council, so we can, as private investors, private companies, take part of the development of the clean energy solutions in this region. So that's something quite new. We see those PPPs, as you mentioned earlier, moving also towards other sectors. But today we're talking about the energy sector, and that's very good news. It's also becoming very similar in terms of access to water, desalination. Those investments are going towards private companies, and I believe it should be in that way. And the very low and the historical low price of oil in this region can demonstrate then it creates an opportunity for the Gulf governments to cut subsidies on oil and gas, and therefore bring more awareness that we used to see in the past, where the energy is heavily subsidized. It doesn't incentivize anyone to be more cautious and more efficient in its consumption. So we can take this opportunity for government. That's what we would suggest, to continue the restriction on subsidies on oil and gas and use that for other investment, while the private sector continue to support the transition of those countries towards the greener landscape. That's what we see. We're trying to promote that through the Clean Energy Business Council, and as a direct investor, like Dr. Volkmar, obviously at Siemens, we're working sometimes together. We see great opportunities in the future, without obviously forgetting the role of gas in the next decade. There's still a lot of gas power plants in the region. Mr. Hassan Al-Hashemi mentioned nuclear. It's also another topic in the landscape of energy sector. So not everything will become a source of renewable overnight. there'll be a rebalancing of the mix of the energy sector, going through gas, nuclear, and renewables. And that's what we have to look at the moment. So that brings different countries, very mature technologies like gas, like nuclear, but sometimes also very new technologies. And we're trying to bring awareness on that subject. Dr. Scherp talking about hydrogen. Also, Dr. Volkmar, in the future, we hope to burn hydrogen in our own gas power plants, obviously. So to decarbonize the entire fleet and the mix, and that's part also of the greenification or clean, towards clean transition. It's not only about bringing new renewables on the ground.
Thank you. Absolutely. Let me relate that back then to Dr. Volkmar, and from a corporate perspective, from a big business point of view, talk to me about how the nature positive, the green economy model is fitting into energy companies' commitments, but also their reporting structure. How is it disrupting the status quo for good or for bad?
Yeah. Thank you for it's a good question. I mean, the topic of partnership, and we are a technology supplying company. The topic of partnership is a vital one. If we especially execute large projects and integrate different components, then it is mandatory to bring exactly these various competences into the entire project. Now, the collaboration with the public sector can be of great benefit, especially for the projects and also especially for the countries. Because, and Shihab mentioned that, if the regulatory framework is not yet properly in place for new topics, then the public sector probably can provide the security to make projects bankable on the one hand, and also speed up infrastructure investment in special areas. And that not only propels clean energy revolution and advance of new technologies, also facilitating learning transfer or even bringing new ways of collaborating and working into the region. But it would also bring forward the development of new policies. And I give you an example. I mean, we look back to the Egypt mega project, which we did a few years back. I mean, this was an addition of more than 16 gigawatts of power capacity in that country. I mean, that was a good demonstration of how to collaborate between public and private sector to the benefit of the country. And if I also look now to the Middle East region, I mean, again to Egypt, I mean, we signed an MOU this January to develop also green hydrogen now in Egypt. Or if and I relate now to Hassan Al-Hashemi, he mentioned the DEWA and Expo 2020 collaboration. I mean, this is also something where we have been part of by bringing in the first green hydrogen facility, production facility with electrolyzer technology to the region. So these are some good examples. And another example, what is right now developing is also in UAE, in Abu Dhabi, with our collaboration with Master and Mubadala to develop facilities for sustainable aviation fuel. So that's another example where I believe we can pioneer new pathways to sustainable and green energy, exactly by teaming up here between strong partners. So that is, I believe, a very important element of any development here.
Dr. Shihab, thank you, Dr. Volkmar. Dr. Shihab, we keep coming back to PPPs. It's absolutely essential. It's pivotal to the discussion, of course. Collaboration means future success, it would seem. So in terms of the advocacy that could be provided in terms of the Clean Energy Business Council, I'll come to Stefan on this as well, but in terms of advice and what companies, especially the big industrial producers, need to consider to be more consumer friendly and environmentally friendly? What do they need to do essentially quickly and most cost efficiently? How do they do that?
As I think as businesses operating in the region, I think we also need to have a fresh look at how business is done. And I think the same thing that I mentioned that applied at the national or government level, where sustainability and circularity is less of a penalty or a compliance cost and more of an opportunity. That shift in mindset, I think, also needs to permeate throughout the private sector. So revising business models so that you facilitate the reuse and recycling of products, looking at how businesses handle packaging, or how they are using energy, and trying to introduce more efficiency into that, and looking at it again, not only from the perspective of environmental sustainability, but as a means of reducing cost, increasing efficiency, and creating new goods and services, new markets that are attractive. I think a lot of I think what the private sector needs to realize is that this is becoming more and more central in consumer choice. So consumers care about sustainability, and it's also becoming more and more central for investors and lenders as well. So the ESG, let's say, performance of a company is becoming less of an afterthought and more of a central part of that informs your business strategy and how you make money and operate in the market and maintain your license to operate.
Thank you. Stefan, let me come to you in terms of the biggest challenges, the stumbling blocks that face these private companies when they're looking to shake up their business models, certainly towards a cleaner, greener agenda. What would you say? What is the biggest challenge they need to overcome? What's the question you're most commonly finding floats to the top when these business leaders get together?
Well, look, maybe also to come back on what was said before is, and we're facing that as an energy provider, investor for the future, is that the public is now expecting this from the providers. So the same for Siemens, for all of us, we have no other choice. It's first. Renewable solutions is not a luxury anymore. We can see clearly it's economically viable. There are solutions, and to jump on what has been said before, it's also creating opportunities. It's not just nice to have, it's also improving the business model itself. On one hand, it's very beneficial for the business owner. On the other hand, it's what the public is expecting. To bring greener solutions, something that we see clearly is from our users or from our clients, is that they want to have guarantee of green origin, for example, from your energy. It has to be demonstrated. It's not only a CSR action. More and more you can see marketing campaigns from all over the world, going to that direction, because it's a real requirement from your customers. Even major brands like McDonald's are going into that directions, American brands, you name them. There are now availability of solutions, very basic, and we'll talk about that a bit later. If you can move, for example, your entire fleet of vehicles towards EV fleet, you can consider solar roof, you can consider efficiency for your business models. There's so many technologies and business cases that are viable now that can be put into place in your business to make it more attractive to your customers. As simple as that. If you want to be seen, noticed, and successful, you really need to go down that path. And if you look at Europe, and it's moving towards our direction as well, it's already happening. The new generation is not accepting anymore a product or a service that is not being demonstrated as climate friendly, and it's the same with investors and lenders now. If you look at VCs, funds, banks, more and more they have also their own engagement. We're not talking only about KFI, key financials, or KPIs. We're looking also at other key engagements. And when we looked at NG, for example, 6 years ago, when we decided to exit coal power generation, everybody was looking at us taking this step as very bold, knowing that it was and it's a profitable business, and that we were a bit off market taking this decision. But today, if you would build a coal power generation plant, you would be hardly find any lender or investor for your project. That's a reality. Really, it's mainstream. It's not a trend anymore. It's a reality for us to find investors in our project. It's becoming challenging.
That's very interesting. Let me pick up on this, because what you imply is a dramatic shift, especially from the consumer's perspective, where, as you say, they simply they demand climate-friendly products and services on the investment side too. And relating to the electric vehicles, of which you wear a second hat, you were the Chief Strategy, Innovation and Customer Experience Officer for NG, a pioneering company in field of EV, electric vehicles in the UAE. What is consumer appetite like for these vehicles right now? Is the level of education there, the level of awareness, and certainly the level of investment from their side?
Well, there's still a long way to go, especially if we talk about this region. We're lucky to be today hosted in Dubai and Dubai Chamber, which is really taking the lead on that front. There are many technologies emerging in the region and coming from other countries into this part of the world, and electric mobility is one of them. It's not yet on maturity, but we've been monitoring this for the last 3-4 years. We even have a working group on that subject at the Clean Energy Business Council, where we're trying to exchange, bring providers to municipalities. And we're very lucky to see that in Dubai, they really embrace that. They have very high ambitions. They want to turn their own fleet, at least they're looking at their own fleets first, turning their own fleet towards hybrid or electric mobility, governmental fleets, taxis. That's one part of it. I think government is doing its part. Second part is they've developed very efficient and already available infrastructure, because in terms of users, there's still this fear of range anxiety. Would my electric vehicle take me all the way down to Abu Dhabi? These kind of things. The fear is still there, but at least the government has done its part. There's more than 200 public charging stations available in Dubai, more than 600 stations, either public or private, in hotels, shopping malls. I think it's one of the highest rates in the world for a city. It's very impressive. Now it's a bit lagging because, on the other hand, we don't benefit from subsidies that we can see in Northern Europe countries or America, where a vehicle cost is at least at par or cheaper than conventional, combustion engine. So we still need to work more on that. Today, vehicles that are available on the market are seen as luxury, mainly Tesla. Tesla is selling a lot of vehicles in the UAE, for example, and coming soon in Saudi Arabia. But for all other brands that are not seen as luxury, is a bit more difficult to pierce. It's a very particular region. People own 2-3 cars. Young people are driving. If you compare to European countries, new generations don't even own a driving license. That's a reality from us, from France, Paris. It's very rare that you would see a young coming out of university with a driving license, a car. It's all about shared economy. It's about public transport, electric scooters. All these services are there. But in our part of the world, it's still a sense of position in the social landscape. The car you own, we're moving slowly, but Dubai is clearly taking the lead. Abu Dhabi is following on that front. So the UAE is very well positioned. Saudi Arabia is coming next. Oman is already doing some great effort. Egypt to another aspect, because they also have a heavy industry on the automobile sector. So it's only positive what we see. Might look a bit slow for some people, but overall we're quite satisfied. We see fleets transforming themselves. The entire business model around mobility, when we talk about electric vehicle, is really transforming and it's changing. People are yet to understand the benefits, because it might look costly, but like energy efficiency, it's an investment that needs to be done, but that will be recovered over time, and that's very positive for the environment.
Exactly, an investment to be recovered over time, and slow and steady growth for the electric vehicle market in the UAE. As you say, I think it has one of the highest car rates per capita in the world. Dr. Volkmar, let me come to you. Whilst we're on the topic of regional projects, Siemens Energy, of course, has teamed up with DEWA, as mentioned, in the building of MBR Solar Park, and collaborated with Masdar, as you were alluding to earlier. What tangible impact, what milestones can we expect from these projects in the near and long term?
Well, I mentioned the DEWA project, but if I take that to a higher level, then what we can expect over time is that for the entire region, green energy will become a business opportunity to supply the world not only with fossil energy, but also with green energy. And this is eventually by utilizing renewable energy from the power sector and then converting it via sector coupling, via electrolysis, into first hydrogen and thereafter eventually to either hydrocarbon fuels or to ammonia as an energy carrier. I definitely see this as a long-term perspective for Middle East region and a great business opportunity over time. And we see such initiatives starting now also in Saudi Arabia. We see this now with our project where we are involved in Abu Dhabi on the sustainable fuel area. And these are a few aspects or a few milestones which we see forthcoming over time now. Now, this is definitely a important aspect for the policy of the region, and what it requires is that also policymakers set policy regulation in a way that these green fuels or this green energy is also recognized as a means to decarbonize energy. So that is an important step. That is something where also European countries and the rest of the world needs to make their homework in order to create a framework where these options are also accepted. And one example is the transport sector. Transport sector today is very much dominated by the discussion about e-mobility, which is for sure a very important element of decarbonizing the transport sector. But e-mobility is probably not always the answer to the challenges of mobility. If you look to the aviation sector, if you look to heavy transport and long haul, if you look to marine sector, and here I believe we would also need to create a kind of level playing field where not the technology stands in the foreground, but the decarbonization potential is the first and most important KPI, and then let the cost of the technology decide, the abatement cost decide which technology eventually wins in which case. So this is something, and again, this has an impact back also again to the Middle East region, and that is also the uncertainty about the speed and about the pace this new business opportunity of green energy export eventually will develop.
Thank you, Dr. Volkmar. Dr. Shihab, let me come to you. Touching upon investments, not only in the transport sector, but also agriculture and every other aspect of our lives which energy impacts. Simply put, controversially, are governments in this region investing enough in clean energy technologies?
So yes, the sustainability agenda is much wider than simply energy. And I think if we want to talk about sustainability in this region, energy is a big factor of that, but there's also the water scarcity challenge that the region has. There is agriculture, transportation, cities, and so on. Is there already an overall, let's say, a holistic view on how to integrate sustainability seamlessly into the ambitious development plans that we have in each one of these sectors? I don't think so, and I think this is probably the next wave of policy making and initiatives and announcements will be in this direction. We've seen early signs, and I think there are movements along, like the announcement of the Green Hydrogen Alliance in Abu Dhabi. There are movements in sustainable agriculture and vertical farming, in water and so on. But I don't think that there is a holistic view on integrating the perspective of economic development, GDP growth, job creation, which has driven policy making in the past, let's say, 10 years, and with all the Vision 2030 and all the other visions that the region had to diversify away from oil and grow and create jobs and so on, with a sustainability ambition. And I think again, that's probably the next wave of policy making that we're going to see from governments, I suspect. But I think the end game that Dr. Volkmar mentioned, is on point. I think this region has a future where it remains relevant in the global energy system, in a decarbonized global energy system, and I would say even has a better chance at being a big part of the global manufacturing network, if that network is decarbonized, because transportation of let's say hydrogen or ammonia or over large distances is still a challenge. So, there's more of a pull now to have, production of some of the commodities that we couldn't be competitive in the past. We now, given the decarbonization agenda, have a better shot at having decarbonized industries in this region, in addition to exporting, green hydrogen and green ammonia. And I think we're not very far from. We've already seen Saudi Aramco export, a blue ammonia shipment. We've seen the announcements in NEOM for building such a large project. We've seen announcements in Abu Dhabi as well. And I think very soon, there will be, in addition to Arabian Light and Arabian Heavy, new exports from the region like Arabian Green and Arabian Blue, and that's all coming.
Exciting times, definitely one to watch. Whilst I have you, let me throw to you a question from the floor, and just to delegates to remind them, please do send them in. I will field them to our esteemed guests. Just click on the icons as prompted on your device. Dr. Shihab, in terms of what protection measures are being enforced by energy companies, whether they're mining minerals and key components for developing this new technology, is there anything going on? I presume that means for the safety and protection, the sustainability of developing these advanced renewable energy products. What's in place?
So protection, if the question is around, transportation of hydrogen and ammonia, then I think these are, at least with ammonia, this is a substance that the world is used to moving and storing, perhaps not at the same volumes as we would need to if it becomes a major energy vector, but at least the basics of how to manage this substance are in place. There is a lot of work that needs to be done to regulate the safety of these products, but I think it's not a showstopper. I think it's rather business as usual for regulators and policymakers. In terms of renewable energy, well, renewable energy is just like any other source of energy once you put it into the electric grid. So it doesn't really raise any additional constraints in terms of protection.
And we touched upon it earlier, Dr. Volkmar, but somebody was asking about the reporting structure, any changes to how a company might operate in terms of transparency or disclosure with adopting a new green agenda or a sustainable path. Is there any change in those regards, with regards to Siemens Energy in particular?
Yes, I mean, that is a very good point. And I mean, we have set our targets also for sustainability. I mean, by 2023, 100% of Siemens Energy's global electricity consumption shall be met by power from renewable sources. We aim to be climate neutral by 2030. And we also encourage our suppliers to take action to protect the climate. Now, if it comes to leadership targets, I mean, the executive leadership remuneration of the company is also linked to the ESG targets of the company. So this is just also a very strong lever also to see that the ESG targets are taken serious, and that they are a main target of the company besides the pure financial aspects of the company. So definitely, yes, I mean, that is something what plays a major role also if you talk about portfolio decisions, and if you talk about investment into future technology, then the aspect of being sustainable, being climate compatible, plays a very, very important role in the decision-making process.
Stefan, let me come to you. Imagine we meet in 1 year's time, we sit here and have the same discussion, the future of energy. What will be the focus? Where will attention have shifted to?
A very good question. Not easy, Rebecca. Look, sometimes when I look at things, I find it extremely slow. I've been 15 years in the region. You can feel disappointed sometimes, but when you look back, we did achieve quite tremendous changes. Looking at energy efficiency a few years ago, that was not a subject at all in the region. Now there are policies, there are clear targets from governments. It's happening. It's for everyone. It can be an opportunity for new businesses. So things are not that slow. So I would say that in a year, key subjects that were discussed with my fellow panelists, hydrogen will be the buzzword that we have around it, will probably be confirmed, not being a buzz anymore, but something very tangible. I think the potential of hydrogen-linked fuel, and is it going to be the next fuel opportunity for the MENA region? Because we talk about the Gulf, but there's also a very strong geopolitical impact on that. It's the Gulf towards Asia, the Gulf towards Europe, but it's also North Africa towards Europe. I think there's a big playbook being written at the moment, and hopefully next year we will be right in the middle of it, where we can really see new opportunities being created and transformed for the Northern African countries to export their renewable energy to the countries that are in need, for example, Northern Europe, but also for the Gulf being a real exporter, as they are today, of oil and gas to the Asian market. I think there's a lot of geopolitical movement at the moment in the future of fuels. If we talk it like that, it's not only energy, but synthetic fuel, e-fuels, hydrogen, ammonia. I think by next year we should be a bit more clear on those opportunities. That's what I would see at the moment.
Fantastic. Dr. Shahab, I'm going to throw the question to you as well. Do you believe that to be true? Are you in alignment with Stefan that as we look towards next year, Gulf exports of energy will continue to rise, not least in alternative sources of energy, but also to potential new markets?
Usually when we do forecasts or try to predict the future, we try to do it, 20 years in advance so that nobody's around to hold us to what our predictions are. But I think let's see, if we want to go ahead and talk about what next year will hold, I think that's a reflection of what our priorities are now. And I think the clear priorities now, and the things that are being worked on and gaining the biggest traction are energy efficiency, are the rationalization of the energy mix in the region, waste management and recycling is gaining a push and a focus, I think, that we haven't seen before in the region. And I think we're going to continue to see more of that. Water desalination and making water desalination more sustainable is a big area of push. And what we're going to see again is this alignment between the policy objective of GDP growth and job creation, and this new imperative to be more sustainable, decarbonize, and reduce waste.
And briefly talk to me about nuclear. Of course, we have to mention it. It's so timely, the first commercial operations for the UAE and for the region. Do you think that the nuclear power plant that we have here, Baccarat, will be something of a model that could be adopted by other regional countries?
Is the question to me?
Yes, please.
So that's hard to say. I think in certain aspects, yes. So having a peaceful nuclear experience and precedent in the region is very important, and it will inform certain aspects of how countries will regard their nuclear programs. I think there are lessons learned from taking something that is such a huge challenge. I think way of really minimizing the accomplishment that the UAE has taken by getting first energy from nuclear. But I think different countries in the region will have different spins and different priorities, and maybe certain parts of the model will not fit the ways that they want to build up their nuclear program. So it remains to be seen, and it's a long journey for anybody who hasn't started it. I think for the UAE to get where it is today, it had to start more than a decade ago. So it's a long journey, and every country will have its own spin on how it develops its nuclear program.
That's interesting you say that, because of course it's playing the long game, isn't it? And the UAE is not playing catch up. It's right in the middle of it now, and capitalizing and reaping the rewards of investments made decades ago. Dr. Volkmar, let me come to you in that regard. From a corporate perspective, how quickly can you see a return on your investment in green, sustainable, eco-friendly projects?
Well, I mean, if I take my expectation or my hope or my dream for the UAE region to develop, then this is all about leveraging the abundant renewable resources in the region for the benefit to decarbonize and make the sectors more climate compatible. Not only in the power sector. I mean, that would be eventually the first area what needs to be speeded up. But the second would be also to leverage this for the electrification of the industrial sector. And that becomes also a more important aspect if global supply chains will be more considered in respect to the carbon footprint of the entire supply chain. And the third area is what I would hope is that the Middle East region takes a lead role, maybe even globally a lead role, in converting renewable power, renewable energy from the power sector, to convert it into hydrogen and synthetic fuels, ammonia, whatsoever, to complement the fossil energy export with renewable energy export, and take a lead role there. I believe this is the great opportunity that the entire region has, and I would expect that this is also a great opportunity for the private sectors also to take investment, deliver technology, and also develop the technology, be it in a public-private partnership or be it in purely commercial projects.
And talk to me about the innovators in this region, the entrepreneurs who are helping to develop the technology that we need to push and accelerate the sector of energy forward. In terms of what's on the ground in the UAE, incubating this talent, hot housing these scientists, these experts, researchers and developers in the field. Is there adequate funding being put into that? And is there something of a brain drain with us losing people to foreign shores? Dr. Shahab, and then Stefan, please.
I think the whole notion of brain drain is becoming a bit irrelevant in really a modern context, right? So we're seeing people working from anywhere these days. I think we are seeing even some of the operational roles in let's say power plants or manufacturing that in the past nobody would have imagined that could be done remotely are being more and more done remotely. So I'm not really seeing this. I see new areas of development and skills and technology transfer being developed, creating opportunities for more and more young people to engage in the sector. We recently estimated that the whole sustainability agenda for this region, for the Middle East, Africa, GCC region, could create more than 1 million jobs across all of the countries of the Middle East and North Africa in the next 20 years or so, if pursued with the right amount of vigor. So plenty of opportunities, I think, and plenty of jobs created. So it's a net job creator for the region. Is our message. So that's all we have on this.
That's what we want to hear. And Stefan, let me come to you with regards to the next generation innovators, business people in the field. What advice would you give to them? What golden nugget of counsel would you give them to help drive this sector forward?
Well, very good questions. I hope, and also to relate to what we said before, is I hope that by next year we'll have accelerated also and improve our ambitions, because it's all nice and good to talk about 2050, 2045. It appears that for governments and companies, everything's going to happen in between 48 and 50. If that's the case, I think there's still a long way to go. Good to see that companies like Siemens and United States are accelerating and have a bit closer targets, 2030 horizon, even 25. I hope that because that's our job now for all of us, you and I, in this talk, we're in the middle of it to accelerate. And for the next generation is really to continue to endorse this, not give up. Continue on accelerating this. It's not a transformation anymore. It's a really metamorphosis of our landscape. I would suggest them to continue, investigate on those new technologies that we are witnessing now, that could be very relevant for the next decade. I think there's so much, today happening. We need just to go to the end of it. Replacement of fuel with e-fuels, recycling, means to desalinate water. For example, as Dr. Shihab was mentioning, we are starting to build one of the first renewable desalination plant in Saudi Arabia. So for the first time, we can see that it's becoming economically viable. So we're really at the beginning of this story. I just hope we can bring a bit closer those targets, and with the support of next generation, they can have, I think, great hopes in this part of the world, because it's a very lucky area. Some countries have great potential to grow even further. moving ahead, transforming the fossil fuel heritage into a future new renewable future. And that's great. I mean, there's only a few regions in the world. We're witnessing that in some part of Latin America, Australia, North Africa, and the GCC region. It's three times lucky now. So I think there's a big potential for the next generation to still remain engaged in this part of the world. Saudi Arabia, some countries, they're still relying on oil power generation. Saudi Arabia is still 50% based on oil. Some other countries like the UAE are fully gas driven, but there's still some countries, Kuwait, driven on oil. That gives great opportunities to change that and improve the mix or bringing new technologies. So I think that in the future for new generation, field of engineering, innovation, technology will be more and more relevant. Things are moving so fast. It's so exciting. I hope that my kids, will be also engaged on that front. Everything is an opportunity. Looking at back, the last 10 years were not that exciting. If I remember when I entered the work landscape, it was certainly less exciting than for the new ones coming now. That's what I would say.
That sounds good. More exciting in the workplace. That's what we all want, ultimately. So we hope that happens for your children. Dr. Volkmar, do you agree? Do you concur with what Stefan was saying? And what's your take on the next generation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to take a corporate perspective on the aspect of innovation and competence build-up. Innovation is not being made in an ivory tower somewhere in corporate headquarters. Innovation is being developed as part of innovative projects. And I just take the example of the sustainable aviation fuel. The innovation and the learnings will be made during the project. And that also will imply that we also will reach, we will leverage the region also in terms of competence build-up and in terms of also placing resources to develop on such kind of technology. And I believe this is true now all over the world. This is why we need these kind of lighthouse projects on one hand to pioneer technology, on the other hand also to build up centers of competence in the regions in order to leverage this. And this is a big opportunity again for Middle East, because they can take a lead role in that area, and they can also adopt the technology leadership in many of these areas.
Exactly that. Dr. Shihab, let me come to you as we round off our discussion for some closing thoughts. What's your key takeaway from our discussion today?
I guess the key takeaway is that my fellow panelists, Dr. Volkmar and Stefan, who are in greater touch with the, let's say, the practical lines of implementing all of these changes that we've been discussing from the private sector, are validating the view. And the view is that sustainability is a great opportunity for the region, that the region can remain an essential and maintain its role as an essential player in the global energy system, even in a decarbonized global energy system, and that there is potential for the region to actually benefit from sustainability, to drive a competitive advantage in other areas, in manufacturing, in addressing its water scarcity challenge, in creating better places to live, better mobility, in attracting talent to the region in the future. So all of these are bright signals and point to a bright future. And we're seeing, the things moving in the right direction, and they're moving at a good speed, and I think they will accelerate.
Moving in the right direction and at the right speed. We couldn't hope for more. Thank you to all of my panelists for that. We must leave our discussion on the future of energy and industry, of course, which impacts directly or otherwise every single aspect of our lives. And its sustainable, clean future is one of the most pressing environmental and economic challenges facing us today. So I very much hope that our conversation proved dynamic and enlightening. And so, speaking on behalf of everyone watching, thank you again to the panelists for their comments, and thank you one and all from more than 35 countries who have joined us this morning. And with that, I will hand back proceedings to Leila. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, and thank you very much to all of our panelists today for our fantastic discussion on the future of energy. Before we all leave this afternoon, if I could kindly ask all delegates to please take a few moments to complete a very short survey, which is positioned in the top right hand. You see the icon in the top right hand of your screen. That's the only way we're able to bring you the content that you're looking for, the subjects that we need to focus on, and the direction that the Chamber needs to focus its energy and efforts on. So please take a few moments to complete the survey. For those of you who took any notes during this session using the platform, please don't forget to download them before you leave. Again, thank you very much, Rebecca, for looking after us today and looking after our panelists. Thank you, panelists, for taking the time to join us. We hope you enjoyed it as much as the delegates did, as much as we did as well. We look forward to seeing you all at our next 360 dialogue, and the focus of that topic will be on global trade, the paradigm shift, which will be taking place on the 31st of May. So stay tuned. Thank you very much. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and please stay safe. Thank you. Goodbye.